She looked me dead in the eye and said, "I think it's best you don't come this year." Just like that. No build-up, no sugarcoating. We were standing in the kitchen, and she was fixing her makeup in the microwave reflection like this was just another Tuesday. My name's Ryan. I'm 38 years old, living, well, used to be living, in Kirkland, Washington. Madison was talking about the 10-year anniversary gala for her firm, the one I helped start, the one we built in our garage before she had a logo or even a single client. I ran her back-end systems, set up her first server rack with parts from my old job, used favors and IOUs to keep us afloat. And now, I didn't make the cut. I asked, "Why not?" Real calm, didn't raise my voice. She sighed like I was asking something unreasonable. "It's a more curated circle now," she said. "My parents are flying in to support me, and look, we're just going for a different image. You're a little blue collar, like it was a diagnosis. Like grease under my nails and an honest day's work were contagious." I didn't argue. What was the point? I grabbed my coat off the back of the chair, walked out without saying another word, and got in my truck. Drove south. Didn't know where I was going, didn't care, just kept the headlights pointed down Highway 101 until the sun started sinking behind the pines. Quick note, before we go any further, drop a comment. Where are you watching from tonight? By sundown, I was pulling into Garibaldi, a little coastal town in Oregon with more fishing boats than streetlights. I found a cheap room above a tackle shop. $40 cash, no questions asked. The window faced west. I sat on the bed and watched the ocean eat the light, one wave at a time. That silence, it was the first decent thing I'd heard in months. Around 8 p.m., my phone buzzed. Over and over. First it was missed calls. Madison's name wasn't one of them. Then Curtis, my buddy from back in the day, texted, "Call me when you can. Something's gone sideways." 2 weeks earlier, I was still in that house in Kirkland, standing behind a ring light while Madison rehearsed a pitch for some international investors. She wanted feedback, or at least that's what she said when she dragged me into the living room and told me to just observe. 15 minutes in, she glanced my way mid-sentence and lost her rhythm. "Can you, maybe wait upstairs?" she said, not looking at me. "It's just distracting. You're not exactly who they expect to see when they imagine our brand." There it was. The real talk, dressed up like a casual request. I didn't say anything, just nodded and stepped out. But the tone stuck in my ears like static, cold, clipped, practiced. I went into the garage, sat on the old bench where we used to plan this company over takeout and half-busted laptops, and just stared at the floor. She hadn't slipped. She meant it. And it wasn't just her anymore. A few nights before that, we'd had dinner with her parents at some overpriced steakhouse where the waiters wore gloves and the sides came a la carte. Her mom had leaned across the table and smiled like she'd just paid for it. "We all have our place, don't we?" she said, cutting into her filet. "Some people are builders, others are faces." She said it without blinking, like I wasn't sitting right there. Madison didn't correct her, didn't even pause, just kept sipping her wine. I used to be both, the builder and the face, back when it was just us and a dream, and no one gave a damn what I wore to a meeting. Back then, I was her partner. Now, I was an eyesore. That night after the pitch run-through, she went upstairs early, said she needed to mentally reset. I stayed behind, pacing the hall, still pissed, but trying to tell myself it was just stress, that she didn't mean it like that maybe I was being sensitive. Then I passed by the home office and saw the printer light blinking, a couple fresh pages sitting in the tray. I figured it was some itinerary or hotel info she needed. I picked them up without thinking. It was an internal memo from her communications lead, event strategy, gala image consistency. Subhead, spouse appearance not aligned with brand. That's what it said. Not aligned. Like I was a cracked tile in her showroom kitchen. I read it twice, set it down. Walked outside barefoot and just stood in the driveway like my lungs had stopped working. Every late night, every weekend, I worked wiring her office when we couldn't afford real IT. I was a misalignment now. Even the language they used felt like they were trying to scrub me out without leaving a trace. I didn't confront her. Not then. I couldn't. I was still trying to understand how the woman I helped build this life with could look at me and see a liability. But the signs had been there for a while. First it was, "Don't wear that shirt to client dinners." Then, Maybe don't talk too much around the investors. Then it was, just drop me off. I'll go in alone. Every step was one rung down on the ladder I thought we'd climb together. She kept climbing. I got cut loose. The next morning, she kissed my cheek like nothing had happened and left for the office. Said she'd be home late and not to wait up. I stood in that kitchen for a good while after she left. Looked around at the granite counters, the custom cabinetry, the high-end espresso machine I never used. All of it bought with sweat from both of us, but now only her name was on the story. I opened the fridge, grabbed a beer I didn't want, and went back out to the garage. I didn't cry, not my style, but I gripped that memo so hard it tore in my hand. The next afternoon, I drove straight to her office, still holding the shredded memo in my jacket pocket. Didn't call, didn't text, just parked out front, walked past the glass doors, and stepped into the lobby like I still belonged. Because in my head, I did. Her assistant, Carly, looked up from the desk and froze like I was holding a crowbar. Is she in? I asked, already heading toward the hallway. She's in a meeting. I didn't stop. Her firm had one of those sleek open layouts. Glass conference rooms, brushed steel, minimalist everything. And there she was, standing at the front of a long table, pacing through slides for two advisors with too much cologne and not enough hair. I opened the door mid-sentence. The whole room turned. She blinked like she'd seen a ghost. Ryan, what are you doing here? 5 minutes. I looked at the suits. Alone. They looked at her. She nodded slowly, mouth tight. Once they cleared out, I shut the door and stood across from her, heart pounding harder than I wanted to admit. So, I'm not good enough for your party now? I asked. She exhaled. It's not about that. I pulled the memo from my pocket, tossed it on the table. Then what's this? It's image curation, she said, like it was obvious. These events are strategic. Everything is about perception. And you, she trailed off. Say it. You don't fit the brand, Ryan. You never cared about polish or presentation, and that's fine. But these investors do. My family thinks... Your family thinks I should sit this one out? I cut in. She didn't answer. Didn't have to. I took a step closer. I got you your first 3 clients. Remember that? I made those introductions. They paid your rent when you couldn't. I built your server by hand. That was then, she said, voice flat. The company's grown. It's different now. Different. Like she'd molted out of the life we had and left me behind with the shell. I looked around the room. The screens, the charts, the polished chrome light fixtures she used to dream about when we had folding chairs and a whiteboard with a hole in it. She had everything now. Everything except the part where she gave a damn about who helped her build it. Right, I said, stepping back. You want curated? You got it. She crossed her arms, but I could see her swallowing hard. She expected a fight. I wasn't giving her one. I turned, walked out, past Carly without a word, and hit the parking lot fast. By the time I got home, I already knew. Didn't wait for her. Didn't leave a note. Just went straight upstairs, grabbed the old canvas duffel from the closet, and filled it with clothes that hadn't seen daylight in years. Jeans she hated, hoodies with frayed cuffs, the boots she once called construction cosplay. She didn't call, not that night, not the next morning. Didn't ask where I was going. Didn't ask if I was coming back. That silence, that was the real answer. I zipped the bag, slung it over my shoulder, and locked the front door behind me like I was locking up someone else's house. I left my key under the mat. The next morning, I followed a dirt trail out to the bluffs. Wind was sharp, smelled like pine needles and cold water. The Pacific stretched out in front of me like a blank sheet. No noise, no clients, no curated anything. I stayed out there for hours, walking along the cliffs, watching the waves hammer the rocks like they were trying to change something. That kind of force, it gets in your chest if you let it. At night, I cooked eggs on a rusty 2-burner stove, cracked open cheap beers, and sat on the porch with a flannel wrapped around my shoulders. The same one Madison called embarrassing during a ski trip with her parents. Said I looked like a mechanic who got lost in a Patagonia catalog. Out here, it fit just fine. Locals didn't ask questions. One guy named Jeff ran the bait shop and sold me a cast iron skillet for $15. Another, old guy with a cane, nodded at me from the bluff one morning and said, "People come here when they've had enough." Didn't say more, didn't need to. Most days I just walked, sometimes barefoot, let the wind beat the noise out of my head. The version of me that had been rehearsed and repackaged for investor dinners, that guy was gone, and I didn't miss him. The truth hit slow, like cold water creeping up your back. I hadn't lost her. She'd just stopped pretending I was still in the picture. Somewhere along the way, she rewrote the story to make it look like she got here on her own. Like I was just some chapter that didn't fit the brand. That part, that quiet erasure, it burned more than any yelling or door slam ever could. You spend years thinking you're part of something real, and then one day it's just not yours anymore, and nobody even tells you. But out there on those cliffs, with the sky cracking open and the wind ripping through my sleeves, I started remembering who I was before I got rewritten. I used to build things, fix things, solve problems no one else wanted to touch. I didn't need a firm to matter. I didn't need a gala invite or polished language or her dad's approval. I needed a clean slate. And out there, between the salt air and the silence, I found it. On my last night in that room, I set my phone on the table and stared at the blank screen. No calls, no texts, not even a calendar reminder. Felt good. I opened the window, let the sound of the surf roll in, and packed a fresh bag. Tomorrow, I'd figure out the next move. I woke up before sunrise, packed the last of my gear, and stepped out onto the porch. The sky was gray and bruised, the kind of coastal morning where everything felt half asleep. I'd planned on driving south for a few days, maybe hitting Newport, maybe not. No real plan. The ocean didn't care, so why should I? I locked the room, tossed my bag in the truck, then reached into my pocket and pulled out the dead phone. I hadn't touched it since the night I left home. It felt heavier than it should have, like it knew exactly what waited inside. I held it for a second, thumb hovering over the power button. Then I pressed it. The screen lit up, and the phone near had a seizure. Buzz after buzz, alert after alert. Missed calls, texts, emails. The notifications stacked so fast I couldn't read them. I leaned against the truck, watching it all flood in. The first message I actually opened was from my buddy Eric, a guy I used to work with before Madison's firm took over our lives. He'd sent a video link with one line, "Dude, you need to see this." I clicked it. The clip was shaky, filmed from the back of a ballroom decorated like a charity auction. Madison stood on stage, polished and perfect, mid-speech. Behind her was the big 10-year anniversary logo. Then a woman, tall, blonde, German accent thick enough to cut through the mic, stood up from one of the front tables. "You excluded your own spouse for image reasons?" she said, loud enough to echo. "Is this how you treat the people who helped you build this company?" You could see Madison blink, then freeze. I knew that look, the panic she tried to hide when something slipped out of her control. The room murmured. Someone zoomed in. The investor held up a printed copy of that memo. My memo. "If this is how you handle loyalty," the woman said, "how do you handle those who invest in you?" Then she walked out. Half the room followed her, chairs scraping, voices rising, the camera jerking around as people grabbed their coats. Another investor, a guy with a thick beard and a sharper voice, stood up and said, "I'll be reevaluating alignment," before turning off his own mic with a little flick of disgust. The clip ended with Madison standing alone under the spotlight, staring at the empty tables, like she couldn't believe she wasn't the one doing the leaving. I lowered the phone, let the wind push through my jacket. More notifications were waiting. Articles, posts, screenshots, bloggers tearing into her for the image-culling memo. Finance guys calling the firm a culture red flag. A morning show host laughing as she read the headline out loud. Then the calls started rolling in. Live! Her name flashed again and again. I let it ring out. Then her dad called. Twice. I let those ring too. He left a voicemail so long it split into 2 messages. When I finally played it, his voice was sharp enough to cut rope. "Ryan, you need to respond to this. Madison is being unfairly framed, and you have a responsibility to clarify the truth. If you don't get ahead of this, legal action will be on the table. Call me back immediately." Responsibility. Funny how that word only showed up when it helped them. More texts from Madison. "Call me, please. This is a nightmare. I need you to just talk to me. You're letting this get worse. Are you seriously ignoring me right now? I know you're seeing this." Then the tone changed. Her lawyer emailed. A formal offer, a non-disclosure agreement, a consulting retainer of $150,000. In exchange, I'd sign a statement saying I'd chosen not to attend the gala, that I'd distanced myself voluntarily, that the memo wasn't what it looked like. Money for silence, money for rewriting the story again. I stood there, holding the phone like it was some infected thing, and let the wind come up off the water and slap the back of my neck. These people had pushed me out of the picture, erased everything I'd done, told me flat out I didn't fit the polished life they wanted, and now that everything cracked wide open, they suddenly remembered my name. I didn't reply, didn't call, didn't text, didn't even open the lawyer's attachment. I was done giving them versions of me they could weaponize. I popped the back cover off the phone with my thumbnail, slid the battery out, and stuck both pieces in the glove box. Let the silence settle in hard. Then I grabbed the bottle of cheap whiskey I had bought from the shop down the road, poured a finger into the metal cup I kept in the truck, and walked out to the bluff. Waves kept hammering the rocks below, same as they had the day before, same as they do tomorrow. The ocean doesn't pause for anyone's meltdown. I stood there drinking slow, letting the cold cut through everything I'd been carrying. The wind whipped at my jacket like it wanted me to wake up. The world back in Seattle was burning, deals collapsing, investors bailing, her name trending for all the wrong reasons. And me? I watched the tide roll in like it was the only thing worth trusting. Eventually, I finished the drink, capped the bottle, and headed back toward the truck. My boots scraped against the gravel, steady and clear. I didn't owe them a damn thing. Not anymore. 2 weeks later, I rolled back into Seattle. Same skyline, same traffic, same drizzle on the windshield. But I wasn't the same. I pulled into the driveway of the house I used to call home. The grass was overgrown. One of the porch lights had burned out. I walked up, unlocked the front door with the spare key I'd left under the mat, and stepped inside. The air smelled like lavender cleaner and something fake, like a stage set after closing night. Her stuff was still there. Shoes lined up like soldiers in the hallway, coats pressed and zippered in the closet. But she was gone. In the kitchen, sitting neatly on the granite counter like it had been waiting for me, was a manila envelope. Inside were divorce papers, filed, prepped, ready to go. She hadn't even signed them herself. Only her lawyer's prep signatures were on the packet. I flipped through the packet until I hit the line that made me laugh out loud. Irreconcilable branding differences. That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just a marketing spin on a gut punch. I left the envelope where I found it, grabbed the last of my tools from the garage, and walked out without touching a damn thing. By then, the word had spread. You couldn't work in tech circles around Seattle and not hear the fallout. 4 major clients pulled out, including the logistics firm from Chicago that used to call me directly whenever their systems crashed. The German deal, gone, vaporized. That investor issued a statement about ethical red lines and founder integrity. Her parents stopped showing up to functions. Publicly, they stepped back to focus on family. Privately, I'd bet they were scrambling to protect their own image. I'd seen them spin harder for less. But the part that really shook the tree, over 30 staff walked in 10 days. Engineers, designers, marketing leads. Even Carly, her loyal assistant who once called me too intense, put in her notice and walked out without a word. Apparently the memo leaked inside the company too. People saw it, people talked, and when the truth hit the air, everyone remembered the parts of the story they weren't supposed to forget. Like who actually wired the servers, who debugged the launch, who worked 70-hour weeks unpaid so Madison could keep her fancy pitch decks flowing. I didn't call her, didn't message. She'd made it clear I didn't belong in her future. Fine. I didn't want the past back either. Instead, I found myself a lawyer. No ads, no billboards, just a quiet office behind a dental clinic in Fremont. The guy barely spoke 10 words during the consult, which made him perfect. He filed my response within a day. I told him I didn't want the house, didn't want the car, didn't want a cent. I just wanted my name off everything that had her stink on it. That same week, I got an email from someone I hadn't heard from in years. Greg Tillman, one of our original angel investors from back in the garage days. Subject line, still building? Body said, you built half that company. Don't let them pretend otherwise. Ever thought about starting your own? No fluff, no pitch, just that. I sat with it for a while. Not in a nostalgic way. I wasn't chasing the past. But something about it hit different. Not because of the offer, but because of what it confirmed. I was never the sidekick. Never the afterthought. I'd just been standing in the wrong story. I hit reply. Simple message. Let's talk. 3 days later, I had a wire transfer, a handshake, and a folder full of potential clients who didn't give a damn about branding. They just wanted results. That I could do. I called it Dunning & Co. Not because there was a co yet, but because I liked the sound of it. Clean, solid, mine. The office was a shared suite above a bike shop in Ballard. Old building, creaky stairs, terrible parking. But it had a window that caught the afternoon sun, and the rent didn't make me choke. First time I walked in with the keys, I stood in the center of the empty room and let the silence soak in. No decks, no curated image boards, no fake smiles, just space. I made 2 calls. First was to Pete, an engineer I used to work with who left Madison's firm the day after the memo leaked. Guy was loyal, sharp, and never kissed up to anyone. He picked up on the first ring. "You serious?" he asked. "Dead serious. I've got seed money and a clean slate." Then I'm in. Second was Leah, a systems dev who used to build back end for 3 departments by herself. Madison once said Leah had raw talent but no polish. Translation, not flashy enough for photo ops. She said yes before I even finished the pitch. By the end of the month, we had 3 clients. One was a nonprofit that needed to modernize their database but didn't know where to start. The guy who ran it said, "I've had 5 consultants talk over my head. I need someone who will actually listen." The second was a logistics startup that lost trust in Madison's firm after the fallout. Their CTO called me directly and said, "You helped build her house. Maybe you can help fix mine." But the one that hit hardest, a former competitor of Madison's. Older guy, rough voice, no patience for PR crap. He came into the office, looked around at the exposed brick and my second-hand desk, then said, "I want someone who remembers what building looks like." That line stuck with me. I hung a photo on the wall that week, one I took back in Garibaldi, Oregon. Sunset over the water, orange bleeding into gray, the tide pulling out slow. No filter, no edits, just how it looked. That spot gave me back my voice, my backbone. Every time I looked at it, I remembered that version of me, the one before I got polished and packaged and quietly deleted. Work was steady, not glamorous, not loud, but real. I'd forgotten what that felt like. 6 months later, I was in the office early, eating a cold breakfast sandwich over yesterday's server logs when the article dropped. Local business journal, one of those feel-good pieces they run to break up the stories about layoffs and real estate. Headline, "Back to Basics. How Small Teams Are Reshaping Seattle's Tech Scene." I didn't think much of it till Pete forwarded me the link with one line, "You're in this." I scrolled past the fluff, the same recycled language about resilience, post-scandal cleanup, the death of corporate arrogance. Then I hit the last section, a photo of our sign, Dunning & Co., no filter, no props. Just our front door. The paragraph below it quoted me from a phone interview I barely remembered giving. "Don't erase the people who built with you. You might need their help again, or at least their silence." That was it. That was the line they ran with. And right underneath it, no mention of Madison, no mention of her firm, just a short note about quiet leadership and founders who remember where they came from. I leaned back in my chair, phone buzzing from a few clients texting congrats, and looked around the office. Leah was typing fast, earbuds in. Pete was yelling at a whiteboard. Some guy from the nonprofit was in the corner on a video call, using our space like it was his. I didn't mind. That's what this place was about. We didn't sell Polish. We sold honest work. I kept my name, Dunning, the same one Madison tried to wipe off every early document, every archived credit, every slide deck once the big investors showed up. It meant something now. She was still CEO, technically. Her LinkedIn still had the photo of her smiling in that navy blazer. But the people who used to answer her calls, they weren't picking up anymore. Word was she'd brought in crisis PR, tried to spin it as a misunderstanding, claimed I'd opted out of the firm years ago. Nobody cared. Her voice had lost its shine. She reached out once. A short email, one line, "Can we talk?" I didn't reply. I wasn't angry, wasn't chasing revenge. I'd already gotten everything I needed. My space, my name, my peace. Some people learn when they hear no. Others, they need to feel it in the silence. I stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at Puget Sound. Water was calm that morning, clouds low, light gray pressing down across the waves. The ocean doesn't care who gets the credit. It just keeps moving. So do I.